My name is Caleb Thornton. I'm 54 years old, and for the last 16 years, I worked as a night duty attendant at Ridgeway Crematorium on the outskirts of Bloomfield, Indiana. Before this job, I spent nearly 2 decades as a refrigeration technician. So I understand equipment, airflow, combustion systems, and the way machines behave when something goes wrong. I'm not a storyteller. I'm not dramatic. I don't believe in ghosts, spirits, or anything that can't be measured with gauges and readouts. But there's one shift I worked in October of 2022 that still wakes me up at 3:14 every single morning. And it has nothing to do with what I saw. It has to do with what the system wrote down. Let me explain what my job actually involves, because most people don't understand what happens at a modern crematorium. We use gas-fired retorts with digital control panels, industrial furnaces that reach temperatures between 1400 and 1900 degrees Fahrenheit. Every case that comes through our facility is assigned a unique tracking tag, and the system automatically logs temperatures, timestamps, air pressure readings, and operator inputs every 30 seconds. This isn't just for legal compliance. It's about accuracy, dignity, and giving families the certainty they deserve. My responsibilities include receiving deceased individuals from funeral homes, verifying identification against multiple documents, preparing remains according to protocol, operating the retort equipment, and processing the cremated remains into ash. It's technical work that demands absolute attention to detail. You follow the procedures exactly. You maintain meticulous records. You treat every case with respect. Any mistake is unacceptable. Ridgeway Crematory sits about 2 miles west of Bloomfield proper, just off State Road 54 near the Greene County line. It's a standalone facility in a quiet industrial area. Single-story brick structure built in 1998 with 2 retort chambers, a preparation room, an office with our control station, and a processing room where we reduce bone fragments to uniform ash. We typically handle 6 to 10 cremations per day, and we run night operations 3 to 4 times per week to manage our caseload and perform equipment maintenance. I normally work the overnight shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., because I've always preferred working alone. No small talk, no distractions. Just you, the machines, and the low hum of the ventilation system pulling air through the building. It's quiet work, and I like it that way. That Thursday night in October was cold, the first real cold snap of fall. I remember the wind howling across the empty fields when I arrived at 10:50 p.m., and the way the building's exterior lights cast long shadows across the gravel parking lot. Inside, the facility was warm, almost too warm, because the retorts generate tremendous residual heat, even when they're not actively running. I had 4 cremations scheduled for that shift. The first 2 cases went exactly as expected. I processed them between 11:35 p.m. and 1:20 a.m. without incident. Verified paperwork, prepared each individual, loaded them into retort 1, monitored the combustion cycles, and documented everything in our digital log. Standard procedures. No complications. The third case was a 71-year-old man named Richard Hale, brought in earlier that evening from Stevenson & Sons Funeral Home in town, natural causes, properly stored, all documentation in order. At 12:08 a.m., I scanned his tracking tag, RH2714, and the case auto-loaded into our control system like it had thousands of times before. I initiated the startup sequence, set the target temperature to 1,850 degrees, and watched through the observation port as the burner ignited. The flame started as a low blue glow, then built to a steady orange roar as the chamber temperature climbed. I stepped away from the port to finish Mr. Hale's intake documentation. That's when I noticed something on the main control display that made me stop mid-keystroke. The screen had flickered. Not an alarm, not an error message, just a brief visual disruption, like a monitor losing signal for half a second. When the display stabilized, the active case number had changed. Where it should have read RH2714, it now displayed CT1984. I stared at the screen. CT, my initials. 1984, my birth year. I backed out of the menu and reopened it, thinking I'd misread the interface. But the case number remained, CT1984, active. I checked the physical tracking tag on my clipboard. It still read RH2714. The digital record didn't match the physical record, something that, in 16 years of working at Ridgeway, had never once happened. I took a photo of the screen with my phone, intending to document the anomaly for our maintenance contractor. When I looked back up, the display had updated again. Now it showed 2 active cremations, but I only had 1 chamber running. The second active case was listed as CT1984. Status, Pre-Processing Operator, Caleb Thornton. Location, prep room. My hands felt cold despite the warmth of the building. I hadn't scanned myself. I hadn't entered any secondary cases. And there was nobody else in the facility. I'd been alone since my shift started. I walked to the prep room, even though I knew it would be empty. The stainless steel table gleamed under the fluorescent lights. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant. Everything looked exactly as it should, except the digital scale was powered on. We only turn on the scale when we're actively logging a case for the record. And the display read 154.3 lbs, which, for the record, is exactly my current body weight. I stood there staring at those numbers for what felt like a full minute. Then I reached over and unplugged the scale. The digits vanished. I went back to the control room, trying to rationalize what I'd just seen. Software glitch, cross-linked database entry, bad firmware update, something explainable, something ordinary. But when I pulled up the full case log for CT1984, the screen showed a complete activity timeline. Tag applied. 12:11 a.m. Chain of custody verified. 12:11 a.m. Remains identified. Thornton, Caleb J. Verifying operator. C. Thornton. All time-stamped. All formatted correctly. All recorded with my employee ID as the verifying attendant. And at the bottom of the log, one final entry. Scheduled start, 03:14 a.m. I'm 54 years old. I have a mortgage, a wife I've been married to for 27 years, and high cholesterol I take medication for. Standing there at 12:14 in the morning, staring at a screen that had somehow logged my own cremation, I became acutely aware of every beat of my heart pounding in my chest. Before we continue, pulse right in the comments which state you are listening from, and what time it is at your end. Also like and subscribe. Enjoy the story. There are rules in this job, procedures, audits. These logs weren't random. They were structured, intentional, and followed every protocol we use for actual cases. The system had written me down as if I were already dead. And the worst part? It had scheduled me for 3:14 a.m., less than 3 hours away. I did what the handbook says to do when equipment acts unpredictably. I shut down the active cycle safely, documented the completion of Richard Hale's cremation at 1:52 a.m., and then I rebooted the entire control system. The reboot takes approximately 4 minutes. During that time, I sat in the office chair and listened to my own breathing, trying to convince myself this was a database fault. A corrupt memory sector, cross-contaminated data fields. When the system came back online, I pulled up the case log immediately. CT 1984 was still there. Still active. Still scheduled for 3:14 a.m. I spent the next hour attempting every troubleshooting step I knew. I cleared the cache. I forced a system refresh. I even tried manually deleting the entry through the administrative override menu. But the system returned an error message I'd never seen before. Record locked. Deletion not permitted. At 2:47 a.m., I called my supervisor, Michael Carver. Michael's been managing Ridgeway for 11 years. And he's the kind of guy who answers his phone at any hour if it's work-related. He picked up on the second ring. Carver. Michael, it's Caleb. I'm having an issue with the tracking system. It's showing a duplicate case entry that I can't remove. There was a pause. What kind of duplicate? A phantom record. It auto-generated during a routine cremation, and now it's logged as active. But there's no physical case associated with it. Have you tried rebooting? Twice. And it's still showing? Yes. Michael sighed. All right. Document it in the maintenance log, and I'll have Troy come out tomorrow to take a look. In the meantime, just ignore it. As long as the actual cases are processing correctly, we're fine. Understood, I said. I didn't tell him the phantom record was mine. I didn't tell him about the scheduled start time or the wait reading or the chain of custody verification. I told myself it was because I didn't want to sound irrational. But the truth is, I was afraid of what it would mean if I said it out loud. I completed my shift at 7:00 a.m. without incident. The fourth case processed normally. CT 1984 remained in the system, but nothing else unusual happened. When Sandra Whitfield arrived to start the day shift, I gave her a brief handoff, told her everything was routine except for a minor tracking glitch that maintenance would address. Sandra's been working at Ridgeway for 6 years. She's thorough, efficient, and doesn't ask unnecessary questions. She nodded, made a note, and I left. I drove home as the sun came up over the flat Indiana fields, and I didn't sleep. The next night, I arrived at 10:45 p.m., like always. I punched in, checked the schedule, 3 cases lined up, and then I opened the control system. CT 1984 was no longer listed as active. It was now marked completed. I felt my stomach drop. The case log showed CT 1984 completed. Start time 03:14 a.m. End time 05:02 a.m. Operator Caleb Thornton. Retort Chamber 1. Final mass 6.2 lbs. There were temperature curves, combustion graphs, pressure readings, all the data you'd expect from an actual cremation cycle. Except I hadn't been here. Sandra had worked yesterday's day shift, and there was no overnight operator scheduled. The building had been empty from 7:00 p.m. until I arrived tonight. I pulled up the detailed cycle report. Every data point was logged. Gas flow rates, oxygen levels, temperature progression from ignition to cool down. It was a textbook cremation, perfectly executed, fully documented. Impossible. I walked to the file cabinet where we keep the physical logbooks. The handwritten records we're required to maintain as a backup to the digital system. I flipped to yesterday's date, and there, in the overnight section, was an entry in my handwriting. Case CT 1984. Thornton, Caleb J. Start 03:14 a.m. End 05:02 a.m. Initials CT. I stared at my own signature. The loops and slant were mine. The pen pressure was consistent with how I write. But I had no memory of writing it. None. I checked the previous page. My handwriting for Richard Hale's case from 2 nights ago. Then the next page, my handwriting for CT 1984. Identical. Unmistakably mine. I didn't tell Michael. I didn't tell Sandra. I processed my 3 cases that night with mechanical precision. And when my shift ended, I went home and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. At exactly 3:14 a.m., I woke up. No alarm, no noise, just sudden, complete awareness. I could hear Lauren breathing beside me, the hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the distant sound of a truck on the highway. And underneath it all, faint but unmistakable, I swear I could hear the low rumble of a combustion fan spinning up to temperature. It lasted maybe 10 seconds. Then it was gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Over the next week, I tested the system methodically. I created dummy entries using fake names and ID numbers, trying to force the software to generate phantom records. It rejected every attempt, flagged them as invalid, required verification, refused to process without physical case tags. I tried entering my own information manually. The system blocked it. Duplicate record exists. The software had validation rules, fail-safes. It was designed to prevent exactly this kind of error. And yet CT 1984 existed. Complete. Verified. Locked. I searched the archived records going back 5 years, looking for similar anomalies. I found nothing. Every case in the system corresponded to an actual cremation. Every log matched a physical body. The data was clean, except for mine. On my 4th night back, I sat alone in the office at 2:30 a.m. and stared at the completed case file for CT 1984. The temperature curves were perfect. The timing was precise. The final mass, 6.2 pounds, was exactly what you'd expect from an adult male of my size. The system had recorded an event that never physically happened. But it had followed every rule, every protocol, every procedural step. It was as if the machine had simply known. And if the system could log a cremation before it occurred, what did that make it? A predictive algorithm? A glitch in causality? Or something that sees forward instead of back? I closed the case file and looked at the observation port on retort 1. The glass reflected my face back at me. Pale, tired, uncertain. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a thought formed that I didn't want to acknowledge. The crematorium only records the dead, and it had recorded me. I started searching the archives on my 6th night back. The control system stores records going back to 2006, when Ridgway first upgraded to digital tracking. That's nearly 17 years of data, thousands of cases, all indexed, all searchable. I wasn't sure what I was looking for at first. Anomalies, irregularities. Anything that suggested CT 1984 wasn't unique. I filtered by status codes, incomplete cycles, aborted processes, system errors. Nothing unusual. Every case showed standard progression from intake to completion. Then I searched for cases with missing physical documentation, entries where the digital log existed, but the corresponding handwritten record didn't. The system flagged 3 results. The first was from April 2018, case EP 1977, Price L&M. Completed, April 14, 2018, 02:41 a.m. Operator M. Carver, final mass, 5.8 lbs. I pulled the physical logbook for that date. Michael's handwriting filled most of the page. 3 routine cases processed during his overnight coverage. But there was no entry for Ellen Price. The case existed in the computer, but not in the written record. I searched for Ellen Price in our intake files. Nothing. No paperwork, no authorization forms, no death certificate on file. Then I searched her name online. Ellen Price, 52, of Bloomfield, Indiana, had died on April 29, 2018, 15 days after the system logged her cremation. The obituary listed her as a registered nurse at Greene County General Hospital. Cause of death: sudden cardiac arrest at home. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. The system had recorded her cremation 2 weeks before she died. The second case was from September 2020. Case DC 1985, Cole, Darren R. Completed September 8, 2020, 04:17 a.m. Operator S. Whitfield, final mass, 7.1 lbs. Again, no physical logbook entry, no intake documentation. I searched the name. Darren Cole, 61, automotive mechanic, died September 19, 2020. 11 days after his case was marked complete in our system. The obituary said he'd collapsed while working under a truck lift at his shop on County Road 450. The third case was from January 2022. Case MK 1951, Kent, Marjorie L. Completed January 22, 2022, 01:33 a.m. Operator C. Thornton. Final mass, 4.9 notes. My own operator ID. I checked the logbook. My handwriting documented 2 other cases that night, but nothing for Marjorie Kent. I had no memory of the name. I found her obituary. Marjorie Kent, 73, retired elementary school teacher, died February 4th, 2022. 13 days after the system recorded her cremation. Natural causes, passed peacefully at her daughter's home. 3 cases, all logged before death, all completed within days to weeks of the recorded cremation date. All showing my colleagues' names, or mine, as the verifying operator. The pattern was undeniable. The system wasn't malfunctioning. It was predicting. I found Nathan Briggs' phone number in the old employee contact list. Nathan had worked at Ridgeway for 4 years before quitting abruptly in March 2021. No notice, no explanation. Michael had mentioned once that Nathan moved out of state and wouldn't return calls. I tried anyway. He answered on the 4th ring. His voice was cautious, guarded. "Who is this?" "Nathan, it's Caleb Thornton from Ridgeway. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Silence. "Did you ever see your own case file in the system? Your own name logged before it should have been?" The pause lasted so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, yeah. My chest tightened. When? March 2021. I came in for a night shift and found myself in the database. Case NB 1979. Status pre-processing. Scheduled start time was 2 days out. What did you do? I tried to delete it. System wouldn't let me. I reported it to Michael as a software bug. He had Troy run diagnostics. Nothing came back abnormal. So I waited. And the scheduled date came and went. Nothing happened. The case just stayed there, active, waiting. I checked it every shift for 2 weeks, and it never completed. Nathan's voice dropped lower. I left because I couldn't work there anymore. Couldn't stand seeing my own name on that screen, knowing the system thought I was supposed to be dead. I moved to North Carolina, got a job at a tire shop, and I checked my own pulse every morning like a paranoid lunatic. It's been almost 4 years, I said. And your case still hasn't completed? No. I think about it every day, Caleb. Every single day. I took a breath. Mine completed 5 days ago. The system logged my cremation while I was standing in the building. Nathan didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was hollow. Then you're different from me. What does that mean? It means mine was a warning. Yours? He trailed off. Yours is already done. I returned to work the next night, but everything felt wrong. The hum of the ventilation system sounded too loud. The shadows in the preparation room seemed too deep. I kept glancing at the observation port on retort 1, half expecting to see my own face staring back from inside the chamber. I wasn't hallucinating. I knew that. But my perception had shifted, like I was watching myself from a distance, like I was already becoming something the system had filed away and archived. At 1:47 a.m., I opened the case file for CT 1984 one more time. I navigated to the administrative controls and selected Delete Record. The system processed for 3 seconds. Then a message appeared. Record locked. Permanent archive deletion not permitted. Case status completed. I tried again. Same message. I tried overriding with Michael's supervisor credentials. Same message. The system wouldn't let me erase myself. I submitted my resignation the following Monday. Told Michael I needed a change, wanted daylight hours, less isolation, more time with Lauren. He didn't argue, said he understood and wished me well. Sandra took over my shifts. Troy ran a full diagnostic on the control system and told Michael everything checked out fine. But before I left, I accessed the database one final time and printed a full copy of Case CT 1984. Every temperature curve, every timestamp, every data point. I folded the printout and put it in my wallet. Because the record remains. The system logged me, completed me, archived me. And somewhere in the servers at Ridgeway Crematory, in a database that never forgets, my cremation is still marked as finished. Even though I'm still here. Even though I'm still breathing. For now. I've been stocking shelves at Morrison's Hardware on East Main Street for 3 years now. It's simple work, organized, predictable. I unpack boxes, check inventory codes, arrange products by category and SKU. The barcode scanner beeps when it reads a tag. The system updates. The numbers match. Everything makes sense. Lauren says I seem calmer, less distant. She doesn't know why I left Ridgeway. I told her I wanted to change, wanted to be home more, wanted daylight and normal hours. That's all true. But it's not the whole truth. She doesn't know I keep a folded printout in my wallet. She doesn't know I still wake up at 3:14 a.m. every October 12th like clockwork, no matter how deeply I'm sleeping. She doesn't know that in those moments of waking, I lie completely still in the darkness and listen. And every year, without fail, I hear it. Faint, distant, barely audible beneath the sound of Lauren's breathing and the hum of the refrigerator downstairs. The low, steady rumble of a combustion fan spinning up to temperature. It lasts maybe 15 seconds. Then it fades, and I'm left staring at the ceiling, wondering if I imagined it. Last month, I drove back to Ridgeway. I didn't plan to. I was passing through Bloomfield on my way back from visiting Lauren's sister in Terre Haute, and I saw the turn for State Road 54. My hands moved before I thought about it. Signaling, turning, following the old route. The crematory looked the same. Same brick exterior, same gravel lot. Same exterior lights casting long shadows across the empty field behind the building. I sat in my truck for a long time, engine idling, staring at the front entrance. Then I drove home. But the next day, I called Michael Carver. He was surprised to hear from me. Said business was steady, that Sandra had taken over full-time nights. That Troy had finally upgraded the control system to a newer software version. We talked for a few minutes about nothing in particular. Then I asked him the question I'd been holding for 3 years. Michael, do you still have access to the old case archives? The ones from before the software update? Sure, they're all backed up on the server. Why? I need you to check something for me. Case CT 1984 from October 2022. Can you pull it up? There was a pause. I heard keys clicking. Yeah, it's here. Shows is completed. October 13th, 2022. Start time, 03:14 a.m. Why are you asking about this, Caleb? Is it still locked? More clicking. Yeah. Permanent archive. Can't be edited or deleted. That's standard for completed cases. Right, I said. Thanks, Michael. Caleb, is everything okay? Everything's fine. Just had a question about an old record. Thanks for checking. I hung up before he could ask anything else. The case is still there, untouched, immutable. Exactly as it was the night it appeared. CT 1984, completed. The system recorded my cremation 3 years ago, and the record hasn't changed. It exists in the database like every other case, verified, time-stamped, archived. A permanent entry in a system designed to document the dead. I've thought about it constantly, tried to rationalize it every possible way. Maybe it's a quantum glitch, a probabilistic echo where the system accessed a parallel timeline where I actually did die that night. Maybe it's a closed temporal loop and the data exists because somewhere, when, it had to exist. Maybe the system's prediction algorithms are more sophisticated than anyone realizes, running probability calculations on mortality based on age, occupation, health markers, and exposure to industrial equipment. Or maybe machines see things we don't. Maybe digital systems witness futures that haven't caught up to reality yet. Maybe they record events before they happen because time, to a machine, is just another data set. Indexed, searchable, nonlinear. And maybe that October night, the crematorium simply logged what it knew was coming. I think about Ellen Price sometimes, the nurse who died 15 days after the system recorded her. I think about Darren Cole, the mechanic who collapsed 11 days later. I think about Marjorie Kent, the teacher who passed 13 days after her case was completed. And I think about Nathan Briggs, whose case appeared but never finished. His was a warning, a possibility, a future that could still change. Mine was different. Mine was marked completed. The system didn't predict me. It didn't warn me. It simply filed me away as already done. I'm 57 years old now. I take my blood pressure medication every morning. I eat reasonably well. I don't smoke. I get regular checkups. My doctor says I'm healthy for my age, nothing concerning, no red flags. But every October 12th, I wake at 3:14 a.m., and I hear the sound of a retort chamber humming in the distance. And I wonder if the crematorium is still waiting. If somewhere in that database, Case CT 1984 is less a record of something that happened and more a placeholder for something that will. Because the system only records the dead, and it recorded me. Not as a warning, not as a glitch, as a fact. People ask me sometimes why I left such a stable job so suddenly after 16 years. I tell them I wanted a change, wanted daylight, wanted simplicity. And that's true, but what I don't tell them is this. There are machines in this world that document what we think of as the past. We trust them to record events accurately, to timestamp reality, to archive what has already occurred. But what if they don't see time the way we do? What if, to a system designed to process death, the distinction between already happened and will happen is meaningless? What if the records aren't history at all? What if they're just patient? I carry the printout in my wallet. Case CT 1984. All 7 pages, folded carefully, the ink slightly faded now. I've never shown it to Lauren. I never will. But sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I take it out and read through the temperature curves, the timestamps, the final mass calculation. 6.2 pounds. The average weight of cremated remains for an adult male my size. And I think about the fact that somewhere, in a database that never forgets, I'm already ash, already processed, already complete, already filed away. It isn't the dead that haunt us. It's the records that shouldn't exist yet, the entries that document futures still waiting to unfold. Sometimes the machines don't make mistakes. Sometimes they simply write down what comes next and wait.